When I was young, my brother and I built a boat with our father. We spent several years sailing and exploring the Patuxent River. And then I met Tony.
Peter and I spent many happy times on that boat, and so when we got married, we built a larger boat and ventured out into the Chesapeake Bay and its many rivers.
We crewed on larger boats with dreams of sailing the world, but then life took another turn.
Today, we look forward to retirement with dreams of leaving it all behind. Come join us on our journey to sail the seas.
It's been a while since we filmed our last episode. We've been researching boats and everything. And I think I can build a boat in about 9 months. No, you're not going to buy that?
No. He said that once before.
Okay, it was worth a try. Anyway, we're thinking about a boat that's about 35 to 45 foot range. The natural inclination is obviously another trimaran. We really loved the Corsair Trimaran. It was very fast and very comfortable boat. So we started looking at trimarans, and immediately we turned to the Corsair. The Corsair did have a 37-foot trimaran, a very sexy boat. Looks like it was a very fast boat. And researching and analyzing the boat, we kind of came to a sad conclusion that for 40 feet, it really didn't have much more accommodations than we had in our 24-footer. The bunk was in four-peak. I don't like bunks in the four-peak. You feel all the wave motions while you're under passage. As you get older, like maybe myself, it's hard getting in and out of a bunk like that. There's a coffin bunk underneath the cockpit, which is even worse for getting out, especially when you have to get up and go out to the bathroom a lot at night. And the only other bunk was a table that folded down. And unfortunately, with a bunk that's on the table folded down, it's either a bunk or it's a table, but it's never both. And when you're making passage, somebody's always going to be sleeping on the table. So we kind of backed away from the Corsair 37. We said, well, let's look at the Dragonfly 40. I actually like the Dragonfly 40 better than the Corsair. The other thing we noticed about the Trimarans is, there was no really weather protection. You could get canvas bimini tops that eventually dry rot, flap, or flail in the wind. But sailing on 24-foot, we were always out in the weather. Rain, sweltering sun, whatever. Mm-hmm. We were always in the cockpit. And as we get older and wiser, maybe we want some shelter. Okay. Maybe we're smart enough to come out of the rain.
Typically people will think about the rain, but I have to be concerned about the sun. I'm very fair, and I have some issues on my hands and arms already. I don't want to be in the sun all the time, even though I want to go sailing. So, that is a concern for me.
We also want to sail for a little bit of distance. We tend to sail away from civilization. So we're looking at surviving maybe weeks or hopefully maybe months without having to stop at a marina or a grocery store or anything like that. And the Trimaran just didn't look like it had enough storage. And when you put enough supplies on there, it's going to affect the performance. Now, these are great boats, and
they're beautiful boats.
Really heartbreaking that we're coming to the conclusion that a Trimaran might not be our next boat. I mean, the accommodations in a 40-foot boat is no better than it was in our little pop-up camper.
And we're past wanting to feel like we're camping. We do want shelter and a little bit of space, storage space. And so we weren't finding that in any of the boats we were looking at that was a Trimaran.
We want a more experience and live on the water. We don't want to camp on the water. We want to go past the 18-footer where we're putting a tarp over to
definitely want to get past
to spend the night. So we stopped what we were doing. We stopped our research, and we stepped back a while.
So after deciding that maybe a Trimaran isn't quite the boat for us without going a lot larger, we kind of stepped back a moment and let it go for a little bit. And while we were on vacation this summer, We saw some catamarans at a marina that we were at, and we thought maybe that's what we should look into. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the catamarans are a little bit style. We always liked the trimarans. That's what I grew up with. That's what I always built. But the catamaran, they looked mighty comfy out sitting on in their cockpits and everything. So we decided to kind of rethink how we're gonna approach this boat and what we want and who we are and what we're really looking in a boat. Being trimaran sailors, I think we're kind of looking for performance, right?
Yeah, initially that's what we thought about. We thought, we wanted a boat. We didn't want to be out on the water and not be able to move along under sail.
We're more sailors than anything. We've been known to be on the water with no winds for hours. We don't like motoring. It kind of defeats the peace and quiet that we really enjoy. So we're looking for some type of maybe catamaran that can sail in the light winds of the Chesapeake Bay during July and August. Otherwise, we won't be able to use the boat, and kind of defeats the purpose. So we're more sailors than everything, and we're looking at performance. So we started researching catamarans, and there's no shortage of catamarans out there. I was really surprised. Back in the 80s, there was only a few, the Prouts, the Geminis, and of course the Privilege. Who doesn't want a Privilege catamaran? You remember those from the boat show? Of quite luxury. So we start researching and looking at all the brands of catamarans, and we're still looking in the 35 to 45 foot range. 35 on the low end, 45 on the high end. And we're looking at cruising the Chesapeake Bay for the first season. Coastal, maybe up to Maine, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, Oak Island, and, the second season, and then the third season we'll see where it takes us. So anyway, we started looking at catamarans. Looking at all these catamarans, there were some things that we decided we just didn't like, some things we liked. Some of the turnoffs for me was wood in the structure. I don't want wood in a boat. After building 3 multi-hulls out of wood, even using the West system encapsulation method, when moisture gets into the wood, it just starts rotting. So I didn't want to have to worry about any wood. I don't want plywood in the bulkheads construction. Plywood is heavy. I don't even want balsa core on the boat. So if the boat had wood in it in any way, shape, or form, I don't mind wood trim and stuff like that. But in the construction, we kind of scrolled past it and moved on to the next selection. The second turnoff for me was the fly bridge. I noticed a lot more and more of these catamarans have bridge decks that are fly bridge, 1 story or in some cases 2 stories up, and that just didn't make any sense to us. Here's why I don't like them. We're sailing in a retirement. I don't want to be going up and down stairs in rough seas in our older age. It's a recipe for disaster. You're going to slip, you're going to fall down, break a bone, and then where you're going to be at in the middle of the ocean. Your guests are a floor below you. The guests always hang out in the saloon and cockpit. So if you elevate yourself up in the fly bridge, you're kind of ignoring your guests, and that's no fun. And that's more important than this nonsensical argument with galley down and galley up, and we'll get into that maybe briefly. Also, the motion, up higher you go in the boat, it's going to be more pronounced. If you're in the beam seas, you're going to be rocking higher up than you go. I didn't do this,
Yeah, I saw that.
And of course, your sail and boom has to be moved higher with your center effort to move higher. So I don't think a fly bridge is good for us.
I don't think I'd want to be up on a fly bridge, especially in bad weather. But even under normal circumstances, I would rather be down lower, where in the main part of the boat. So.
And if we're making passages and you're up on a fly bridge and you need to come down to get me, you got to run down the stairs. I got to wake up, run up the stairs, hopefully not trip in an emergency or crisis situation. It doesn't make any sense. So if it had a lot of stairs going up to the helm, we scrolled past it, and we started looking at elsewhere. We mentioned previously that we wanted a boat that performed in the light airs. There's a lot of catamarans that are really more what's called chartermarans. They're quite luxury. They're quite large. But you need like 15 knots of wind just to get them moving, and that's not going to work for us.
And for us, yeah, I mean, it's nice to have luxury. It's nice to be comfortable, which is certainly a concern. But we want to sail. So, we want something that is a combination, or at least a compromise.
So we're more sailors than motorers, and the creature comforts of So the barges with sails, we kind of, screwed past. And the Chartermarans, we'll leave that to the charter. What kind of boat are we looking for? Or what kind of aspects in a boat are we interested in? Well, first of all, it's going to be you and me sailing it, right?
Right.
So it has to be somewhat easy for me or both of us sailing, or even Tony to sail.
To be able to handle it.
So, the lines and the sails and all that have to be coming back to a central point, cockpit, or whatever the case might be. But two people should be able to handle it, one person in emergency.
We of course want comfortable accommodations, and we want to be able to be off grid for an extended period of time. We don't want to have to, if we want to sail a distance, we want to be able to do it and know that it's safe.
And I think we're looking for a boat that has a proven track record, a manufacturer that's been around a while. I built boats, going back to the 70s. I've seen manufacturers come and go. I don't want to end up with a boat that was built today and the manufacturer's gone tomorrow. So we're looking for something very built in modern techniques, vinyl ester, foam core, something like that. Obviously no stairs again.
No stairs to go up, and it doesn't really matter whether it's new or used. That's not not an issue. We would be happy with that. As I said before, I'm concerned about the sun, and of course we want to feel safe in bad weather conditions. So we want to make sure we have protection in the weather. And we want comfortable accommodations, of course, but they don't necessarily have to be luxury. But because it's just going to be Peter and me for the most part. We might have a few other people at a time sail with us, but it wouldn't be a lot.
One of the things that we looked at was the galley, and this is an argument if you go out on the bulletin boards, chat rooms, and all that. But for us, it didn't make a difference whether the galley was up or the galley was down. I personally, since I do most of the cooking,
he does.
I prefer a full galley rather than a half-assed galley. I don't want a half-assed galley just to have a galley up. I want a full galley, and in the boat range that we're looking for, 35, 45, you're not going to get an adequate galley up. So that was not something we were considering. I would rather have a full galley. The argument that you want a galley up so when you have guests up, you can be part of the conversation, just doesn't make any sense to me. I know people are going to jump all over us. I don't care.
It's probably like wine. It really is kind of like what they say about wine. A good wine is the wine you like. So the argument about galley up, galley down is kind of a preference. It's what works for you. And for us, we think galley down is perfectly fine. It gives more space in the upper level area of the boat and cockpit and the inside. So
our experience is when we always sailed with guests that we all congregate in the cockpit and even in the saloon. So I mean that's where you want to be with your guest. And if the guests want to get go off on their own, then they go up on the forward deck. So it really makes no difference if we see a boat that had a galley up and it was an adequate galley, wouldn't influence our decision. If we liked everything else on the boat, we would go with it. If we see something we would not. Another point I want to make or recommend to everybody is there's no shortage of opinions out there.
Yeah,
There are
that's
no
true.
shortage of reviews. I would highly recommend to ignore all of them. At this point in your research, look for what works for you. Don't listen to somebody else who's not sharing your dreams, who has different aspects, or who might want to live on their boat and motor everywhere. Just ignore all that. There's no shortage of reviews and opinions. So do your own research, narrow out your boats with the aspects that you like. And then if you want to start looking at other people's opinion, go ahead and go for it. But understand they're not sharing your dreams. Their use might not be the same as yours. So your perfect boat, somebody else might crap all over because they don't like some aspect of it. So don't let that be discouraging to anyone out there in our situation looking for the boat. And one more note. We did price used and new boats. These used boats are almost as expensive as the brand new boats. We priced one down in Florida that cost more than a brand new one with more modern bells and whistles. So it's really a seller's market out there, unfortunately.
You do kind of have to see a boat too. Like, I really think it's important to go and look at the boats that you're considering, and actually get on them. You know, check them out in person, because it's hard to imagine by looking at pictures and envisioning in your head, in my opinion. Videos are better, but still, I think being on the boat
Yeah, I mean, once you
matters.
narrow your selection down, go to a boat show and check it out, or find somebody who has that boat and go check it out. Most people are more than happy to show you their boat. Some of the boats that we came across and we looked at, I don't know if we should. Well, they're common boats, and we're not trashing any of these boats.
No, of course not.
We looked at the lagoons, but those are more Chartermarans. I don't think they would work for sailing in the light airs of the Chesapeake Bay. There's nothing wrong with lagoons. Don't write us, because we're not crapping on lagoons. It's just the lagoon lifestyle is not for us. We look at the Fontaine Peugeot boats, the French boats, very nice boats, but they had steps going up top. Looked at the Nautic, which is a great catamaran, but the one that we were kind of looking at in our range, you had the helm seat all the way in the stern, and I was so paranoid if I leaned back, I'd be in the ocean, and so we didn't like that, so we moved on to the next one. We look at the Leopard. The Leopard was a very nice boat. The one we were looking at, I think, had 3 levels. The flybridge was actually the medium level. You can go higher and lounge on. I think Leopard was also the boat that had the forward lounge. When you have such a luxury lounge like that, all your guests are going to go up front, leaving the poor sap that's at the helm or on watch all by himself. And so he's not part of the conversations. So I didn't like that. The Maverick also had that was the Bali. Had a forward lounge as well. And then you had some innovations in some of these boats, like I forget which one. They had the Versa helm, where the helm came up and came down. But then we came across Seawind, the Seawind 1190, and what we were beginning to realize was every boat that we were looking at, we were comparing it to the Seawind. And then it dawned on us, maybe Seawind's the boat for us. Anyway, the 1190 from Seawind was what met all our requirements. It had dual helms, no steps to go up and down, had that great trifold door that opens up, so the saloon. And the cockpit is just one big room. It was a performance catamaran. Had dagger boards, drop down rudders.
Which we liked, because remember, we liked, we're Trimaran sailors, and we could beach our boat. You could go in very, very shallow waters in a Trimaran because of that. So the dagger boards were, we liked that idea originally.
It looked like it was a very fast boat. The accommodations worked for us. It had 2 outboard motors. I think they were 20 horsepower motors that were on tilt systems. So the 1190, I think, was a boat for us, and all we had to do was find a dealership. It was the year of COVID, so Annapolis Boat Show was canceled, so there was no luck there. So we started looking for a Seawind dealership and ready to get in a car and drive somewhere, and Lord and behold, there's a Seawind dealership 40 minutes up the road from us. And so that was kind of what do they call it?
A God wink.
A God wink? Whatever. It was a sign that, okay, man, well, we're kind of excited. Anyway, I was familiar with the Seawind brand. They've been around for a while. I knew they were an Australian boat, but now they're being built in Vietnam. I raced against the Seawind 24 back in the early 80s in the Governor's Cup. The Seawind 24 crossed the finish line like 4 in the morning. I was crewing on a Sea Runner 31, and we crossed the finish line at 11 in the morning, a little bit behind the Seawinds. So I knew they'd been around. I know they have a great reputation. I was familiar with the Seawind 10,000, 1,000, and XL. So we made an appointment to go up to, I guess that's Edgewater, Maryland, to a broker called Catamarans to take a look at a boat. And we brought our checkbook, and where are we going to sign? 1190 is a boat for us. Or is it?
Stay tuned.
Anyway, if you like this video, go ahead and click subscribe down here and give us a thumbs up. Next week we'll talk about how close we came for buying 1190 and why we chose not to at the last minute, what boat we did decide. And I'm Peter.
And I'm Tony.
And we're looking forward to having no
No
agenda.
agenda.
Are we good?
We're good.